I want to start off with you, Max, because I don't think some of your takes has been out there in the open. So what do you think actually went wrong in the North London derby? Was it more of the same from the Leicester of the Newcastle game, or was there more that you saw there in the game on Sunday?
I think the first thing I'd say is that what we learned is that we didn't learn anything. It mapped out exactly kind of, I don't mean in respect of the result, I just mean in respect of how we approach games, how we play, what the sense of belief is, whether it's in the team or in the stand or in the atmosphere, in the stadium. I'm not saying that we were still watching it from behind the sofa like we were, in that kind of Conte, Jose, Nuno era where we just couldn't watch it because it was unwatchable football. It is not that. It's almost worse in a way because we're just frustrated that we know that we've got so much more in us, but then we have these kind of very obvious flaws that if you took the 63,000 people in the stadium and asked them about it, they would all say exactly the same thing. That's how obvious it is. So I think that's kind of how we approach it. And we all have this sense, so I certainly do, that we are just approaching this point for Ange, which is a worrying point. Right, the honeymoon period is definitely over, and if there's ever a time that the honeymoon period is over, it's the North London derby at home, early in the season. 1 and a bit seasons into Ange's kind of reign, and now we know officially that period is over.
Yeah, I felt like the honeymoon period was probably over after the first 10 games of last season, to be honest, after we got all those injuries and suspensions. But I guess there was still a lot of goodwill from the fan base, and I think that might be starting to run out. But look, we'll get into Ange Postecoglou in the next segment. But Dave, do you kind of agree? Are the problems there for all to see? Are they just the same problems rearing its ugly head once again?
Yeah, of course, it's the same problems rearing its head once again. Actually, we defended the high line pretty well most of the game. It didn't really catch us out too often that game. But unfortunately, it's the same old problems. It's the likes of your set pieces, switching off, not tracking your man. And look, we can sit here and moan that it's a Postecoglou problem and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, this has been happening long before Postecoglou arrived here. And, Postecoglou can help set them up, which he has. How he looks to defend them. But at the end of the day, he can only set...
Dave, you're breaking up there.
I'll log out, log back in. I think
you're right now, Dave. Oh, no, he logged out.
All right, so why don't you take that one?
So what was the question?
Do you think it's the same old problems? Is there anything new that you saw?
In terms of new problems, I think it's pretty much the game we expected it to be. Before the game, we knew what Arsenal were going to do. They were going to be in their low block. They were going to be compact. They were going to be defensively resolute. They were going to be very effective from set pieces. And we knew that going into the game. I don't think anything in the game surprised anyone. I think maybe the only surprise I would say is how lackluster we looked in that last half an hour. The fact that we actually had zero, reaction to Arsenal going ahead, and we had no answer to what they were trying to do and how, when we're throwing the kitchen sink, you expect at least one chance, or at least try and put them under pressure, or at least try and ask different questions of them, and we just weren't able to do that in the last half an hour. That was particularly worrying. But I would say the game plan from the start was they were going to sit in a low block. We were going to have a lot of possession. We were going to try and catch them out using our high press, which we did on a few occasions, but we didn't make the most of those opportunities. Arsenal, with their double pivot of Jorginho and Partey, were going to be quite compact centrally and make the central areas very congested, which they did. They left a lot of space out wide, and a lot of the game was going to be about what can Johnson and Son do when they have opportunities and space out wide to take on their fullback and create an opportunity or put a cross in the box or take on their fullback, and are they going to be able to muster moments of quality from those moments, and that would determine how much joy we were going to get out of this Arsenal back line. And because there was just no going through centrally, it was just too congested. And we tried a few times, and we weren't getting much joy. The only joy we were getting centrally is when we were pressing, and that in the early part of the game. And in terms of the wide players, a lot of the game was going to be determined by how well they did, and unfortunately, they just weren't up to the task. Timber and Son got a few moments in the first half, but Timber had Johnson pretty much the whole game. They weren't able to beat their fullback pretty much after like 20 minutes in. They weren't able to put Arsenal under pressure, and we weren't able to break them down from using our build-up play through the central areas. It was too slow, and Arsenal made sure those central areas were clogged up. But none of this was a surprise. So I don't think we learned anything. But I guess what we wanted to see from this game was that we had answers to those questions that were going to be so obvious that were going to be asked in this game. And the fact that we knew these questions were going to be asked and we didn't really have any answers, even though we knew what was coming, that's probably the biggest concern, because you would have thought on that week before the game, I know it's been international break, but the few days before the game, they'd been working on these things because they knew how Arsenal were going to set up. But the fact is, even though we knew it, we couldn't stop it, and that's the most frustrating thing.
Yeah, I mean,
I might counter you on that slightly, if you don't mind.
Go on. Yeah, please do.
So this notion of not just the low block, but congesting it in the middle and we knowing what Arsenal was going to do. First of all, it wasn't a case about what Arsenal was going to do. This is what everyone does to us. Okay, they this isn't an Arsenal thing. Actually, I don't remember a game between Spurs and Arsenal in recent years where there wasn't a period of the game where I thought Arsenal were going to score. And in this game, I never felt that Arsenal were going to score. We were never under pressure. First few minutes, a couple of moments when Martinelli got in behind Porro once when he slipped. But really beyond that, we were never under pressure in that game. The reason we were never under pressure in that game is they played exactly the same way as Wolves did and exactly the same way as Newcastle did. I'm talking Wolves twice last year. Actually, they didn't congest, and no one we play against congests the middle of the field. It is us that are congesting the middle of the field. Okay, this is why we're easy to play against and it's predictable, is because it's what our frustration with Ange and the way he plays is it's actually pretty good for the most part, and the tweaks are not that complicated. There are 2 or 3 things that completely change the effectiveness of how we play, and everyone we come up against know it. And if you look at the goals that we've conceded over the last, you could probably look at the last 40 or 50 goals, they are either from set pieces, which I know we'll talk about, or they're from counters. Right, we have I don't know if I'm right on this, but I believe that so far this season we have the highest possession in Europe's top 5 leagues is Spurs. Yet we've created very, very little from it. So that just shows there's a total flaw. And I know we're going to go into it, and I'd love to go into the slightly more tactical side of that. But I will tell you one thing, and Ben, I said this to you in the Bayern Munich game. Every Spurs manager, pretty much since Glenn Hoddle, with the exception of Harry Redknapp and Martin Jol, all lost their job for the same reason. And that reason was being a slave to a philosophy. If you think that there's only one way of playing, and plan B is to do plan A better, that's flawed. The reality is no 2 games are the same. You can score first, not score first. Oppositions can have a good day, bad day. There's loads of different things that can happen in it. You can't just always think you're always going to play one way. And I fear for Ange, as much as we love him as a guy and he's played exciting football, it's great for the neutral. But the reality is, if he's a slave to his philosophy and he won't tweak a couple of things, especially the fullbacks going central in the final third, that's the bit that makes it congested, Sim. It's not the opposition, it's us. We make it easy to low block. We send our whole team into the width of the box. Okay, and the opposition, the opposing way. And by the way, it cost us at both ends because we don't have any channels to play through. Madison's got nowhere to go through. We're threading balls through eye of a needle stuff. We all get frustrated. We don't even get a shot off. Yet we get to the edge of their box very easily. Mm-hmm. Why? Because we've got 2 fullbacks who go central. We play through the lines once in our first third. We play through the lines again in the middle third. Absolutely fine. Get to the edge of the box, and Porro and Udogie are sitting kind of just either side of that D on the edge of the box. No channels. not only do we get low blocked, we get intercepted. And when we get intercepted, our fullbacks are out of position down the other end and we concede on counter. So if the alternative to that is in the final third, Porro and Udogie actually go wide. So imagine Porro alongside Johnson. Porro is one of the best crossers of the balls in Europe. Why would you want him in the middle? We bought Solanke, who's great at attacking crosses and heading a ball. How many times did we actually cross the ball in this game? We turned it back, right? Imagine the Porro being alongside Johnson. And then that drags their fullback out and another player because they don't want to get 2-on-1 on that side. Doing the same on the other side. Everything looks different. Space for us to play, space for us to score. And if we turn over, sorry, it's a bit of a monologue. If we turn over and we get countered, well, the fullbacks are in that right position to be able to. And suddenly, by the way, it drags in Saka because he needs to support the 2-on-1. And it drags in Martinelli because he needs to support the 2-on-1. Then they haven't got these counters. And we just do it over and over again. So anyway, it cost us at both ends of the field, but the congestion, I think, is down to Ange, not down to clever play from Arteta.
There's a comment here from Grayson Pierce saying this bloke should apply for the head coach role. He knows his stuff. So Max, you're applying for the gaffer role. But look, I think it's hard to disagree with what you're saying. But there were a lot of moments where we did get it in wide areas. We did put the ball into the box, and it was just poor delivery, poor quality. James Maddison was getting on the ball and not providing what we need from a creative outlet in the middle of the park. Kulusevski was pressing high up the pitch, and his final product was just all wrong on the day. So is it a collective of, a system that's really hurting us at times and also a quality issue, Dave?
For me, I think a lot of the problems that we're seeing actually comes down to a leadership issue, to be brutally honest with you. I think some of the defensive situations, how vulnerable we are from set pieces, some of the times where we get hit on the counter, like that Newcastle second goal. Romero's trying to play the offside trap. Everyone else is trying to defend him behind. If you have one guy across that back line communicating, old school, people may say, but it's something that great defensive have always had, that one leader communicating, dragging people in, saying, look, don't go this time, I need you to sit here, this is the danger and stuff like that. You avoid a lot of these goals. If you got a leader at set pieces, barking orders, telling people to pick up players, keeping them all switched on, you avoid conceding a lot of the goals that we do from set pieces. But it's not only that. I just think a lot of these players have also maybe lost a lot of belief in what they're being asked to do. When we go forward, if you notice, a lot of the times we actually wait for the opposition to get back, set all 11 men behind the ball and reset their defensive shape that they've been working on during the week. And I think a big part of that reason is because a lot of our players don't want to take the risk, because they know when they give the ball away, they have to sprint 70, 80 yards backwards that way. And most professional footballers, or especially midfielders and, forward players, a lot of them don't want to do the work back that way. So I think, a lot of what we're seeing is because they don't want to do the work that way and they're playing it safe. There's times there where they could put the ball in, play people through, play the runners, but they choose not to. They end up playing the safe pass 5 yards sideways. And look, we can sit there and blame Postecoglou all we want. He was asked in the press conference last season, are you instructing your players not to shoot and stuff like that? He said, no, I am. But I genuinely believe they're taking it on themselves because they don't want to do the work that way, because they know that what comes with it. But also going forward, I'm going to be brutally honest here. Everyone knows, that I've had my problems with this transfer window this summer. I think we've left Postecoglou completely short in the forward areas going forward. And I hate to say it, but it's already come back to haunt us. We never addressed the problem properly this summer, especially that right-hand side. It's a huge problem. Brennan Johnson, nowhere near good enough. Better as an impact sub than he is starting. Udeber, only 19, could be a fantastic talent, but he's raw. When you see him get himself into good positions, that final ball isn't there. When he's shooting, he's blazing it over the bar. He's not even getting it on target. He's absolutely raw. And I think a lot of our forward problems, Werner, if you're looking for him to come off the bench and change the game, he doesn't have the capability. And I think therein lies a lot of our forward problems. It was a big problem for us last season. It was one of our most glaringly obvious problems that we needed to fix. And how many times have you heard me say we need to fix it with quality? And we didn't do that this summer. We took more gambles and it's already come back to haunt us.
Hang on a sec, though, Dave. we all know that Ange Postecoglou, he said it many a time that he has final say on these transfers coming in. Timo Werner was signed very early in the window. That was definitely one that was signed off by Ange Postecoglou. He's come out and said that Odegaard was someone that he definitely wanted through the door. He's talked about Solanke as well. So, I mean, in the past, I would agree with you, and I'd blame Levy in the hierarchy for the transfers coming in under Conte, under Mourinho, under Nuno, under all these managers. But I don't know if I can blame them anymore under Postecoglou. It seems as like all these players are the players that he wanted.
I don't blame them.
Who do you blame, Matt? Go on.
Sorry?
Go on, Dave.
Just quickly, not necessarily. I've done a video of the international break, and I've done about 2.5 hours worth of research sort of into it to find the bits and pieces I need. The first summer under Postecoglou, that was largely Gabonini and Paratici that, identified the transfers, done a lot of the work. You even hear Gabonini speak about someone like Van de Ven. I had to push behind the scenes to convince people to bring this guy into the club. From my research, the only one that I think was his, and it was to sign him in towards the end of that summer transfer window, was Johnson. I think he put his neck on the line, so there's no excuse for him there. Werner re-signed him this summer. I know that he had interest in trying to bring Werner to Celtic, so again, that is his signing, and maybe he has created some of the problems in the forward areas in terms of that. But the way this new data scouting-led model works, and you hear David Pleat, you don't need scouts you do need scouts. I'm a firm believer you should always have the C&I test, but they're off this data-led scouting model, and a lot of the players that are coming into this football club, and it was the same underneath Antonio Conte, the manager might get 2 or 3 players that he needs, that he identifies that he wants to work with. The rest are all flagged off this model. They're put forward, and he does the phone call to see if they're coming for the right reasons, and if they're not, then he might go, look, I don't know about this guy, I don't like the attitude, find me someone else. But not all of these signings are his, and that's the way modern football is working, because the amount of money that not only this club, but other clubs have wasted under managers that they bring in the door, and they don't get a lot of return for it. So a lot of clubs are heading down the Brighton-Brentford route. They barely ever miss in the transfer window. They go on to sell for a lot of profit, or the players go on to grow and become a lot better. And that's the route we're going down. And that's the biggest misconception under Ange Postecoglou. Everyone goes, these are all his signings. They're not. One thing I will say is some of the worst signings are his signings, and I think that's where the problem comes in.
Well, he does clearly say that he has final say. Let Max come in here for a sec.
But you listen to the Gabonini interview, he tells what players he's brought in, the ones he identified. Same with Johan Lang, he'll also say some of the players, so someone's lying.
Go on, Max.
So for different reasons, I'm very let's say familiar with specifically the Brighton, okay, and the Brighton model and the people in Brighton, just from personal relationships. And what we're challenged with compared to what Brighton challenged with is not the same. And probably the perfect player to kind of explain this is actually Johnson. When you're in a position where we are, which is, let's call it, 7-6-5, trying to go 4-3-2 and eventually 1, right? That's the objective of Spurs. Unlike Brighton, that might have been 15, 13, 12, looking to get into European spots like they did last year. That's where they're at. So when they're bringing in those players, different methodology with a different objective and a different target, right? And putting aside their methodology and data and everything else and how they sort, which is fascinating, and I've seen it with my own eyes. But put that aside. For Spurs, we have a different challenge, which is we want to challenge at the very top and get to, let's call it, a title challenging position. Then you need a different methodology. The methodology is you've got to look at every player that you buy and you say, can I, assuming that the rest of the team is up to the level, can I win the league with this player in that position? And if you want to test this out, you can take any Spurs player individually, put them in the Man City team and say, could Man City win the league with this player in the team? If you do that with our Spurs team, yeah, and I can say, so imagine the other 10 are the current Man City players, right? I'm quite happy to run through the team, and I doubt we would disagree on many of these. Could you win the league with a Man City team and Vicario as your goalkeeper? I believe you could, right? I believe you could. Could you win the league with Porro as your right back and that Man City team? I believe you could. Udogie, I think so too. I don't think they have a great left back anyway. They change it. You could. Van de Ven, I have absolutely no doubt. Romero, interesting point. Maybe we'll come back to him because he's in a predicament. Then you go through the midfield, right? Bissouma, he can be good. No, maybe not. I don't think you'd quite win the league with him as your holding centre back, right? Maddison in a great team, very possibly. He could be that guy, right? In the right environment. Then you go to the forward. Son's, I'm not going to say past his best, but we're certainly not making the most of him. But let's give Son as a yes.
Son's
okay?
a definite yes.
I know, but he's struggling a little bit. He's lost a yard, and it's affecting his decision making actually. But part of that is due to Andrew's tactics. I think we'll come back to it.
100%.
Centre forward, don't really know. Solanke's a new entity for us. I'm going to say probably not. Right? He's not Haaland. You need that Haaland, and he's not. And then you go to Johnson. And I've taken a long time, but purposely left Johnson in. Could you win the league with Johnson as your right winger? The reality is that Johnson is a promising player. Maybe we paid a lot of money for him, but he won't get in the England squad. Or he wouldn't get in the England squad. I know he plays, for I think Wales, right?
Wales,
he wouldn't get in the England squad. He would be anywhere near the England squad, right? So he's not. And bear in mind that Premier League football and Champions League football is a higher quality than international football. Right, he wouldn't. So he isn't that player. We spent a lot of money on someone who isn't quite at that level, and if whether Andrew's behind it or not, and this is the frustration about how we play and what we've all seen, is then you bring them into this club. You think they may have an opportunity. If you watch the game back on the weekend, I reckon there were at least 8 to 10 occasions where our central midfielders or our fullbacks had the ball at their feet and Johnson was available wide on the right, unmarked for a potential one-on-one, and they didn't give it to him. They looked at him, faked, turned the other way, played it into the centre forward, played it in that tight area, maybe. They never even gave it to him. I can tell you in my crappy level of football that I played, but as a winger, if you shy away from me 4, 5, 6, 7 times, I'm done. I'm just not there anymore. I'm not going to keep making a run, being available, and you never give it. So we completely stunted Johnson in that game.
I disagree with that. I thought Johnson saw a lot of the ball. I thought he saw a lot of the ball.
I guarantee you, if you watch it back, how many times he was available and they didn't give it to him.
I thought he was about 6 or 7 times. He had the ball one-on-one with Timber and did nothing with it.
Sim, when you receive the ball, okay, if you receive the ball quickly, as in the person that's passing it to you releases it to you quickly, you have way more space as the receiver. As soon as you delay that pass, by the time they receive the ball, their options are gone. And especially for a winger, you want green grass and you want loads of space. The biggest culprit of this issue is actually Romero. I have never seen a centre-back put his foot on the ball and wait for so long before making a pass. That it kills momentum. It gives the other team opposition to shape up, and he does it like it's South American. I get it, and Argentina also do it, by the way. But he plays like we're winning 4-0, including when we're 1-0 down. Guys, just move the ball, and and there's nothing wrong, by the way, with giving the ball to Johnson quickly to get it straight back from him. It's also fine because you move the opposition, shift the other side, then there's channels. We are just predictable and slow. And it's very frustrating. That's a manager thing. That's not not an effort thing. It's not about not wanting to get back. It's not even about leadership. This is a manager's thing sitting on the thing. He should be able to look at that game and go, guys, these things need to tweak. Don't be a slave to philosophy. Romero, play quicker. Wingers go out wide. Leave Maddison space. Sim, you mentioned about Maddison. Maddison played some very, very great balls in at time. But the thing is, it's very hard for him to pick anyone out because just when he's looking for Solanke, who's standing in his eye line? Udogie. Udogie's in the middle. Can't even find him. This is 10, 15, 20 games of repeat. Literally repeat. I really don't think it's about effort. I do think it's about partially to do with some of the recruitment. I think that we're in a challenging position because when you're just one last thing and I'll yield. But, when you're like, 6th, 5th, trying to push 4th, 3rd and upwards, right? The players that you buy need to be different. And I'm not blaming Levy because it's a very expensive thing to do. Finding players that are ready made to be better than one you got. cost an arm and a leg. I don't mean transfers, I mean wages. This is all about wages. These players at that level commanding 350 grand a week, right? So we've gone, and I think I love the signing of Odegaard and of Bergvile and maybe of Gray, although Gray wasn't particularly cheap. But they're all gambles, but I like the nature of them. Van der Ven is very young, Udogie is young, even Porro is young. But we have a young players, really, really throughout. But if we want someone who's going to make us better today, right, that can't be a Johnson. The player that it can be costs 75 million, 300 grand a week. And I think that's where it's a little bit of a glass ceiling for us, I'm afraid. And not qualifying for Champions League just, it enhances that because there's less money, commercially and TV wise to kind of doing that. And, we're back under the glass ceiling. We spent a little bit of time above it. We're back just under it.
I take the point you're making on Brennan Johnson, and you're right. That did happen a lot with Christian Romero. It happens a lot between the both of them, a lot of the times. But their second half, Johnson had 4, 5, 6 good opportunities trying to get crosses or get shots on target. He didn't take any single one of them, and that there is why Romero refuses to give him the ball a lot of the time. A lot of the players do it. Madison is another one. He could easily switch it out to him. He chooses not to. Chooses to take the safe option because they don't rate Brennan Johnson. They know nothing's going to come. That's why they're ignoring Brennan Johnson. Anyone that's played in the football team, if you feel like he's going to give that ball away or he's not going to.
Dave's cutting out.
Yeah.
Dave, you're cutting out again.
Dave, I've got to tell you something, and I know what you're saying, but I'm going to tell you something. That does not exist at a professional level of football. That does exist on our level of football and our Sunday League football. It doesn't exist at professional level of football where you think that a player.
It does. You look at Werner last season making runs in behind, players ignoring them. I'm sorry to sit here and say it doesn't happen.
No, not that. Not that. I meant what doesn't exist is teammates thinking that player's not good enough, so I'm not going to go and give it to him. That's the bit that doesn't exist, because these drills are things that are done in training as well, over and over. It's not like us training once a week and turning up on a Sunday. So that methodology about where the ball goes and where it comes back is drilled, right? It's not a question mark. It's not, it's Brennan, I'm not going to give it to him. What it is we've absolutely, he's not, I don't think he's good enough, but it doesn't help that we absolutely crush his confidence. And worse than that, when you crush someone's confidence by missing them out and not giving it and whatever, he becomes overeager when he's in position to try and do something that he's almost panicking. His crosses are panicked, right? Because he just needs, I just need to get it across and not get it blocked. And he's just not at the level. But I don't think the players are missing him out. I think our tactics are what's causing the problem. And I'm sorry, I'm going to repeat it again. Just imagine Brennan Johnson with his heels on the line, with Pedro Porro 6 or 7 yards just behind him. Okay, that ball goes from error to 2 players. That is a 1-2. It's a pass back that goes between the fullback and the centre back. Okay, to the byline to put a much easier ball across. We don't do that at all. And the reason we don't do it is we do not have fullbacks joining our wingers on the wide.
I actually disagree. I think the tactics we have would bring out the best in if the winger was good enough. The tactics is actually designed to give the wingers as much space as possible, and the tactics are designed to give the wingers as many one-on-one situations with their fullback as possible. And I thought Johnson had ample opportunity to show something on Sunday, actually. I thought he was the one getting a lot of the chances. He got a lot of the possession, and he had so many opportunities to run at timber. I can remember off the top of my head at least 5 or 6 opportunities. I remember watching when we were at the stadium on Sunday. Johnson was getting it a lot. I thought we were giving it to him a hell of a lot, Johnson. I thought he had so many opportunities to take on timber and create an opportunity. Yeah, that might be true, but I'm just saying that I don't think the tactics are stifling our wingers. I think the tactics are designed to get the best out of our wingers. I think the problem with our wingers at the moment is they're not up to the task, and that's a problem with what Ange has asked him to do, because if they're not up to it, then he has to change and ask them to do different things. If they're not up to doing what he needs them to do, which is take on their man, be be really good in one-on-one situations and create chances from wide areas. At the moment, Son and Johnson, they're actually getting a lot of space, but the problem is they're not very good in one-on-one duels. Johnson don't think has ever been good,
why?
and Son I don't think at this stage of his career is very good in one-on-one situations. But I think the system that Andrew's created is designed to get them in as many one-on-one situations as possible. And if you're a winger who's good in those situations, you'll absolutely thrive in it.
Sim, do you know why? Do you know why that is? Because football's changed. 20 years ago, when I was 18, 20, 30 years ago, when I was 20 years old or whatever, we were playing football as we were younger. What would the fullback be told to do when he's faced with a winger? Show them the line.
Yeah.
You used to shape your body out that way and you used to show them the line. And that's how we used to play it. Defenders, fullbacks were always told that. We were always told that, show them the line. In the last 15, 20 years, that's not been the case. It's the opposite. They're actually told to show them this middle. Do not let them get in a one-on-one position where you shape your body so they can't get around you on the outside in a one-on-one with green grass. That's danger. Send them in the middle where there's going to be congestion. Teams play now with two holders. They're very, very organized as a backline. Send them into the congestion area. Son cannot beat a guy on a one-on-one on the outside. He has to do some magic in order to maybe sometimes get away with it, and it's rare. Werner sometimes, but he ends up on his wrong foot, so his quality is not good. Johnson is on his right foot, but his quality is not good. We had someone, actually, Solomon, who was unpredictable and going both ways. I wish we played him more. But the reality is, I know you're saying we're set up like that, Sim, but actually, it's not us that are set up like the opposition are set up to not let us do that. They're very, very smart. And so put Johnson on, let Johnson have it. They're not worried about him. They're not. He's very predictable in how he plays.
Exactly, that's what I'm saying. That's the problem. I think if we had a different player out there who was maybe less predictable in those situations, I think they would more thrive. I think teams know what Johnson's going to do. He's going to go on the outside and try to go for a cutback, and they just easy stopping it.
Player? This is where I went with it. How about a second player rather than a better player? How about a second player? Because the second player changes it, right? A second player, as in especially Porro, but a second player being alongside that guy completely changes that dynamic. Because actually, you don't the one-on-one, the ball where Johnson receives the ball is actually much closer to the edge of the box than by the corner flag, right? Because you've played those little triangles and and also there's one less defender in there. Why? Because they've had to send someone out for the two. It's pretty much every team plays like that, right? It's very, very. Maybe you could argue that Man City sometimes don't play like that, but to be fair, they've got the best in the world, and I'm talking about their B team. Okay, they got we don't have that level, so we need to maximise, and we are. I know this is again repeat, but we pay the price for that tactic at both ends of the field continuously. And the first team to do it to us was Wolves last year in the first Wolves game. We all saw it map out in front of our eyes. And Wolves didn't even bother changing it for the second time we played them. They did exactly the same. And it scored on 2 counters where we had no fullbacks in place. Right? There was a tweak, by the way. I know I say about don't like that he's a slave to philosophy and he doesn't tweak. He did tweak something this weekend. I don't know if you guys noticed. Because of what he's trying to do with the fullbacks, the difficulty is when you've got 2 holding midfielders. Because 2 holding midfielders, it's very unclear as to which is the one that's splitting the centre-backs when one of them needs to go and become a fullback. So in this game, he played 1 holding, which was Bentancur, right? So Bentancur, if you noticed, he dropped between Romero and Van der Ven, so that Romero and Van der Ven can split, and one of them, depending on where the game's a little bit flawed because Bentancur is not Rodri, and Bentancur is actually better being a more offensive player. It might have been okay with Bissouma. It definitely would have been okay with Højbjerg. It was always okay when Dyer used to play it in that Pochettino area when he did that, when you have 1 holding who splits. But in general, everyone's got us figured out. And that is why we were there knowing that today Arsenal haven't got their 2 best players in midfield. And maybe we'll have an opportunity. You said it, Sim. They're going to low block us. They lower blood cost, but everyone does, so why not? It was nothing smart about it, and we didn't. We had 15 attempts, and none of them really felt like the keeper was in trouble, even though there was quite a few on target. The one player that gave us, sorry, you said something about Kulusevski before. I actually thought Kulusevski played really well.
He did. He did.
I think he played really well, and he had the same issue where its options weren't there, and he's trying to make something. He fought hard and he played hard, and his feet are good. The guy that did well was Odebear, because he goes two ways. He can go down the line and he can go in the middle. So and our nerves, now our collective nerves, and this is why when I said honeymoon period, I don't mean those first 10 games. Honeymoon period is everyone's going to cut you slack for one season. As a manager, you're finding your way. Now we're really not going to cut him that much slack. Like, he's now under pressure. I don't think he'd been under pressure before job-wise. I think now if he doesn't do something next 3 or 4 games and tweak it, and we lose to a lesser team, Arsenal hurts, but respectfully, Newcastle was worse, right? Full control, totally battered them. They never looked like scoring, yet they scored 2 and we lost the game. We're figured out, guys. We are figured out.